Hi, I'm Amy. Being present is a topic that has been in conversation for quite a few years now. The idea of staying and living in the present moment, not always wishing for what's in the future and not always thinking about what happened behind us, but learning to savor the moment, live in the moment, be present. Well, I have been kind of going deeper in that on a different level. I have written about being present. I've done videos, I think, about it in the past, but I am doing a little bit deeper dive into that in a little different area lately. And it all came about because of a word the Holy Spirit spoke to me in my journal a couple of weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago. And it's not a new concept. It's not really a new word per se, and yet it was said differently. And as I've been sitting with him in this word the last couple of weeks, and with the things that I've been walking through and living through the last couple of weeks, he has taken it deeper in ways that I didn't expect. So I'm gonna read it to you. It's very short. I have a place in one of my journals where I just write the word listen, and then I'm just still. And usually before I even get the word listen written out, he's already beginning to speak. And that this is what he spoke to me a couple weeks ago. He said, "Stay with me." And then there was this pause, and I thought that might be all of it. But then he continued, "What if that's all I'm asking? What if that is your calling? Would it be enough for you? Do you recognize the vastness of this calling? Are you willing to live in the mystery, the unknown, the unfolding of this walk?" And again, at the beginning, his three words to me were, "Stay with me." That has stayed with me. It has been going around and around in my mind now since he spoke it, in a lot of different areas, a lot of different ways. As I was preparing last week to lead worship at several different venues, different events, one of them was a weekend retreat. I also received word and an invitation that one of the speakers was not able to make it, and they asked me if I would be willing to speak. And so I stepped into that kind of just with just a few days to prepare before I was going to teach, and I was very excited to do so. I love to speak and teach. But as I was preparing, this word "stay with me" was resonating through my thoughts and just through my being. And every day I would wake up, and my first thought, just at that first conscious breath, was, "Okay, stay with me. How do I stay with you right now in this moment? How do I stay in the present moment, but in the present moment with you, Father, with you, Jesus, with you, Holy Spirit? How do I stay present with you?" And the next few days were amazing, as they always are when I've experienced this before, maybe at a different degree this time, maybe at a different level of intentionality. I'm not sure. It's not the first time I've experienced it, but there was this sweetness of rest, of knowing that even though I had very specific things that I was preparing for each day, things that needed to be finished, I could rest. I didn't need to look to the next thing until the Holy Spirit brought it up in my spirit and said, "Okay, now step into that." I could rest. Now, did I do that perfectly? No. There was one day where all of a sudden I was very overwhelmed with the amount of things that needed to get prepared and practiced and put together for last week. But then I remembered his words. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important, so valuable to write things down that God speaks to you. Because as incredible as they are, and as much as we are sure we will not forget, it's a lot like when we have our children and they're making these amazing milestones all the time, and you're sure you will never forget the first time they did this, or when they said that, or the first time you went to a particular place with them. All these things I'm sure I'll never forget. And yet I look back through my baby books and I'm astounded at the things that I had forgotten that were very special. And it's the same way with when the Holy Spirit speaks to us. He speaks these amazing personal words that are now words. They're for today. They're for this moment in our journey and what we need to know right now. And it's important that we write them down so that as we get hit with things, we can go back to them and go, okay, you prepared me. You gave me a key. You gave me something that is solid to stand on, something that's going to feed me, something that's going to gird me. So I went back to that word that he said to me after my day of anxiety. And he said, stay with me. I'm like, okay. The next day was precious, very focused. And he did more in one day than I could have imagined. And then the next day again, very focused and precious, just being present with him as he was speaking to me, downloading more in a moment than if I would have put weeks into this, because he knew what was needed in the moment. He knew what he was trying to teach me. He was trying to show me who he was. He was very excited about what he wanted to say to the group of people that I would be speaking to over the weekend. And then the next day again, downloaded the song list that in a moment, I had been thinking about it for weeks, probably months, and nothing had really stuck. And then in a moment, I sat down at the keyboard and he started this with one song and just one word and started unfolding. And suddenly there it was. And I was weeping at the keyboard, worshiping. And I was like, this is it. This is where you want to go. And so it's not just being present to enjoy what we're experiencing in the moment, but it's being present with him so that he can help us be in the moment we're supposed to be in, actually, and not bring other things into that moment that don't need to be brought in at that point, that we don't need to be anxious about, we don't need to be preparing for, but to actually be in the moment that he has designed for us to be in that space and time. Now, that was last week. I caught a cold while I was at the retreat over the weekend, which doesn't surprise me a whole lot. The weather's changing, it's fall, had not slept very much recently. And so it started coming on. Well, by the time I left to drive home Sunday afternoon, I was very sick, and I came home, went straight to bed, and I spent the next 3 or 4 days almost solid sleeping in bed, up some during the day, but just slept more in those 3 days than I probably had in 3 weeks. And the thing is that word was still ringing through my head, because when I came back, there were other events, there were other things that were on my calendar. But in his kindness, I feel, in his kindness, he had spoken that word to me, stay with me. And then he was using this head cold and cough that I had, and this just the sickness that I was going through, to invite me to stay with him in that as well, to just rest. When I wasn't sleeping, I was sitting on the porch of my little cabin, my little prayer cabin, sitting in the sunshine with my eyes closed, just listening to the birds sing. And I was just overwhelmed with the gift that I could take these days to rest and to be refreshed in his spirit and in his presence. When I thought I was coming back to more things to do, but he wanted me to stay with him in the sickness. Now, most of us would think that we would be more with him when we're ministering and when we're giving out to others. But actually, there was a precious sweetness in these moments of blowing my nose and coughing and just not really being able to do anything, not being able to go anywhere, that I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't trade. And so now I'm feeling better. And there are things that I'm now preparing for. So even doing this video, I was thinking about this. I prepared, got things ready to do this yesterday, and it was on this topic. And I sat down, turned the camera on, I sat down, and I just wasn't real settled on how to get started and exactly what to say. And so I just paused and I'm like, Holy Spirit, am I staying with you in this moment? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And he said, no. So I shut the camera off. I put it away. And even though Thursday is my day, yesterday was my day that I have set up, that I do these, that I post my blog, that I send it out in my newsletter. If I would have done that, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but it wouldn't have been his best. For whatever reason, today's his best for me to do this. And yesterday, it was his best for me to be with him quietly, just the two of us, not doing this. To be present in the present moment with him where he is, whatever it is that he wants to be doing in that moment. I encourage you today, whatever you're doing, as you're walking through your day, if you find yourself anxious, if you find yourself frustrated in a conversation, if you find yourself just trying to get it all done, but there's a longing in your heart for something else, there's a longing in your heart to be still, or there's a longing in your heart for it just to slow down, maybe that's the Holy Spirit. Maybe that's him saying, okay, I want you to stay with me. Let me show you and teach you what that looks like on this day, in this hour. What does it look like for this minute? Does it look like just being still? Does it look like calling somebody? Does it look like doing that thing that's been on your mind to do for a while that you haven't, that gives you great joy? Whatever it is, invite him to show you how to stay with him in your thoughts, in your attitude, in your actions, in your intentions, in your plans, whatever it is. And I promise you, it will be the best place that you could be that's doing the most good.